let's talk about these balloons. Let's talk about these UFOs, because the White House has been making statements. The Senate has been making statements. The White House official now has admitted that the Chinese spy balloon probably wasn't actually a Chinese spy balloon at all. Or
the messaging for this is all over the place.
Yes.
So National Security spokesperson John Kirby has been saying all kinds of mumbo jumbo. He's saying, let's not really use the word balloon, but he continues to call it a balloon. We don't think it's Chinese, but the Chinese do this. And it's us who figured out that they do this. But that's not a thing. We don't have to worry about UFOs. It's a lot of who the heck knows? We're going to show you why it's so confusing. See what you can make of this. It's really crazy. One of the main things that he said just yesterday was, we haven't seen any indication or anything that points specifically to the idea that these 3 objects were part of the People's Republic of China's spying program, or that they were definitively involved in external intelligence collections efforts. That's a not. We're not.
So it's not. Okay.
But he did say Chinese spy balloons exist. They have found them, not the Trump administration. It wasn't these existed, wasn't them. We found it. High five. So, basically he's saying this was not unfounded, but maybe it was a slight overreaction. Listen.
The president also instructed the intelligence community to take a broad look at the phenomenon of unidentified aerial objects. Indeed, President Biden conducted the first ever daily intelligence briefing session devoted to this phenomenon back in June of 2021. He was briefed that this is not just an issue for the United States, but one for the rest of the world. And as I said, our friends and our partners are dealing with this as well. We worked on a bipartisan basis to stand up an office at the Pentagon to study this, in partnership with the intelligence community, academic institutions, and the private sector. These unidentified aerial phenomena have been reported for many years without explanation or deep examination by the government. President Biden has changed all that. We are finally trying to understand them better. Now, in light of the Chinese balloon program and this recent incursion into our airspace, the United States and Canada, through NORAD, have been more closely scrutinizing that airspace, including enhancing our radar capabilities, which, as the commander of NORTHCOM and NORAD, General Van Herk, said just last night, may at least partially explain the increase in the objects that have been detected. Slow-moving objects at high altitude with a small radar cross-section are difficult to detect on radar. Even objects the size of the Chinese spy balloon, which had a payload the size of roughly 3 school buses, were not picked up by previous administrations or other countries. We also know that a range of entities, including countries, companies, research, and academic organizations, operate objects at these altitudes for purposes that are not nefarious at all, including scientific research. That said, because we have not yet been able to definitively assess what these most recent objects are, we acted out of an abundance of caution to protect the security, our interest, and flight safety.
So he goes on to say they were over secure areas. They floated over. He does say that he doesn't think they had any steering capabilities, but they floated.
Yeah, and then the White House comes out and also admits that, hey, these things, it was Chinese, but it blew off course. There's nothing nefarious. They're literally talking out of both sides of their mouth. I also believe that, I think once they found, they want us to be scared. They want us to be distracted with this. And once it was, the idea of a balloon is not scary, kids holding a balloon. So they now need to change it. Mm-hmm. Now they need to really change this story, right?
But where they're not going anymore, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask a question really quick. So if a balloon is uncontrollable, how did they ever intend to bring it down then in the first place? How did they think that this wasn't going to happen? Didn't they have to have some kind of control to deflate it to bring it down?
Well, that's
or did they just plan on it?
That's a great question. That's one of the big questions that senators were asking as well. It's well, you said it was, we couldn't really figure out where it's gone. We can't find these things now. So in the past 48 hours, we've shot down another 3 of these. NORAD has shot down, they've never shot down anything in their literally history. And now they've literally shot down 3 of these and we don't know where they are. Yet you shoot a balloon down, it goes like this. It's not like there's no flight path where it's continuing to fly.
Yeah.
So they're asking this. They're like, where the hell are these things? You see these giant school bus things in the sky that you're shooting down. We can't find them now?
Shouldn't you maybe go to people who do use these for weather purposes and say, how do you get them back? How does that work?
Well, now we're learning this afternoon that they're not even balloons. These things, now they're saying there's no amount of, and scientists are saying there's no amount of, you can't have a pressurized gas at that altitude. It just does not exist at the altitude where these things are being spotted at this point. So what the hell's happening here? So, but is it aliens? This is a question, of course, that the press corps has been asking, right?
Yes. So here's John Kirby's response to, is it aliens or extraterrestrial?
My understanding is that the top officials at the Pentagon, when asked explicitly if they were ruling out any kind of extraterrestrial presence, said they weren't ruling anything out. And yet at the beginning of today's briefing, albeit with her usual winning smile, Ms. Jean-Pierre seemed to rule out any extraterrestrial activity.
I don't think the American people need to worry about aliens with respect to these craft, period. I don't think there's any more that needs to be said there.
On the Russia.
So
Okay.
they're not Russian, they're not Chinese, they're not aliens, then what the hell? Okay, so what the hell?
Well, let's watch Corinne Jean-Pierre answer that same question about aliens. And the room literally laughs at her. And she was like, well, you wanted me to say it, so I'm going to say it.
I know there have been questions and concerns about this, but there is no indication of aliens or extraterrestrial activity. With these recent takedowns, again, there is no indication of aliens or terrestrial activity with these recent takedowns. Wanted to make sure that the American people knew that, all of you knew that, and it was important for us to say that from here because we've been hearing a lot about it.
So something is going on here. I mean, something really, really fishy is happening here.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you think about the total distraction from the Nord Stream pipeline explosion, which I heard Senator Mike Lee today talking about, saying this could rise to an impeachable offense for President Biden. An impeachable offense for President Biden, carrying out a war crime, an attack, a terrorist attack on we're not at war with Russia. So this would be an impeachable offense where you don't have congressional approval to carry out a clandestine terror attack on a foreign country, an impeachable offense. And so they don't want you talking about that.
Is a war crime only an impeachable offense, or is that not a criminal offense? Like, doesn't go beyond impeachment at that point if it's a war crime?
Yeah, because impeachment really is just like kind of a slap on the hand, like you lose your job.
Yeah.
Right? You know, and then
Not in this climate.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be a member of The Hague, which we are not. So we don't have to worry about the International Criminal Court anyway.
So there's no war crimes tribunal because we're not a part of it because we would be in violation of all of it. True. So Senator Mike Lee, speaking today to Glenn Beck, I found this absolutely fascinating. He was in this intelligence briefing yesterday with Northcom and NORAD and these other members of the military industrial complex that were giving this briefing behind closed doors, classified briefing. And he said, we literally walked out of here. We don't know. They don't know. And they couldn't tell us anything. Watch this. It's crazy.
And we hear this morning that they are UAPs, which I guess could be balloons, but usually those are, something solid. These were the size of cars, and they weren't balloons. They were metal. Is that true?
Yeah, so first of all, we don't really know what they are. I don't know how they claim now to know what their nature is, whether they're commercial, military, or from some other origin, because they haven't found them. I suspect at this point that they're theorizing on what it might be. That was what was so frustrating yesterday, is they held this classified briefing to tell us about what happened. And they showed up and basically said, we don't know what happened. We had all hoped and expected, based on public statements, that they had covered what was left of these objects and that they were studying them. They haven't found them, at least as of yesterday when they briefed us. They hadn't found them. They still don't really know what they are.
So wait, did they show you video? I don't know what you can and can't say.
No.
Come on, we launched missiles.
Yeah.
We know we have the video from the cockpits. We know that.
Yeah. we repeatedly asked them about that. Can you show us anything by way of photographic documentation of a video footage, anything like that? They said, yeah, we've got some that really isn't useful because the objects are so small, so far away that the resolution doesn't really do anything for us.
Then why would we shoot them down?
The picture. It's an excellent question. So we shot them down, not knowing what they were, just based on their altitude. We just knew that they were there. But I still can't fathom why it made sense to scramble fighter jets, shoot missiles at them, bring them down when we have no idea what they are.
Okay.
Yeah. Good questions, right?
Yeah.
We don't know what they are. We can't find them. We asked, as senators, can you show us the cockpit footage of this? Mm-hmm. Like we saw on the USS Nimitz, right? David Faber and others. Show us the cockpit footage. Show us the footage of you shooting these down. We don't want to show it to you because it wouldn't really help you because it's too small. You wouldn't understand it. Really?
Well, and what's the difference of like a cop seeing an unidentified object at the end of the street and just shooting it? You know what I mean? Like, no questions. It's like, I see this thing at the end of the street. Looks like it could be evil. I'm just going to shoot it.
I love in the chat, someone says, shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah.
I can just shoot quick.
Yeah.
So we,
that works really well with what John Kirby, that works really well with John Kirby said that clip we played earlier where he's like, we're trying to identify these. We're looking into it. It's like, you can't identify something if your first reaction is to blow it up and then let it fall and then just leave it there, walk away.
And then we can't find it.
That's basically what they did.
Yeah.
I mean,
they didn't try to recover it. They're just like,
unbelievable.
No.
I mean, if it is a distraction, right, they really want our attention off of what's happening right now in Russia with Putin launching this massive offensive and NATO literally trying to go full force right now against Russia and China. And then, and also hide us from what's going on with NORAD, the Nord Stream pipeline, et cetera. So why are they doing this? Well, I think Marco Rubio gave us some insights because he walked out of this briefing and he, of course, has been pushing over the past year for the military-industrial complex to be enlarged because of this UAP, UFO threat that he's not labeling China, he's not labeling aliens, he just wants you to be somewhere in the middle of it, but he also wants us to spend a lot more so we can expand the military-industrial complex. Listen to his response on all this. Watch.
We've heard the exact same description in hundreds of cases, dozens this year alone. So observing unidentified objects over U.S. airspace, particularly over sensitive areas of the country, is not new. What we heard in there described, what we've heard publicly described, sounds just like the stories we've heard repeatedly. And that's why an agency was created, an interagency task force was created to study all of this from a scientific perspective. And so my concern now is that the Department of Defense is not sharing that information with those scientists so that you can compare the data we have on these instances from the ones we have retroactively in the past, some of which have been explained, and so that we have a better understanding of this. And I think there's a stigma associated with this because of space aliens and all that stuff. This is not about that. This is about whether an adversary, in my mind, this is about whether an adversary has developed a capability that we know that they know we're not looking for, because our systems are set up to see missiles and airplanes. They're not set up to see smaller objects at lower altitudes.
If they're not new, sir, then why were they shot down?
Well, that's what's new. No, that's what's new. What's new is that that they were shot down, which is extraordinary, because we've never shot down anything in 65 years of NORAD, and over one weekend they shot down 3 things. So, but the bigger concern now that everyone wants to know is what is it and what were they doing here, and but as they describe what's been observed.
Here it is, watch. This is when he calls for more money.
We have hundreds and hundreds of these over the years. The report that was issued by the Department of National Intelligence earlier this year lists over 500 such cases, dozens this year alone. So the question now has to be, why are they setting up a new task force? Take this data, make it immediately available to those scientists so you can enter it into that database, but also so you can cross-reference it and compare it to the other hundreds of cases that we have. That's the only way you're going to begin to get answers about what it is we're dealing with here, who it belongs to, what it's doing here. I imagine some of these are going to have explanations that are pretty simplistic. Others are going to be more complicated. I imagine some are frankly going to be crafts that were launched by a company or an individual or whatever, and others may not be. They may be nation states that have developed some rudimentary capability.
So the bottom line is we don't know. We don't know what they are. It could be space aliens. It's a national security threat to us. And we've shown you what this threat looks like now, right? We've shown you over the past couple of days what a threat this is to America. So we really need to ratchet up the amount of spend that we have on this, make sure our Space Force is now robust, and spend billions more in the military-industrial complex on this. Well,
they keep saying, though, that we think things like this are used for private purposes, like private companies' research and, sort of government research that is not nefarious. So, maybe we should spend our time finding those people and be like, do you use things like this? How do you use it? How does it work? Can you show me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, what is this high-altitude metal car-shaped thing that's floating up at the outer limits of space? It's not a satellite. It's not a weather balloon.
Somebody has to say, yes, I use this, and it's not a big deal if that's the case. So I'm listening for that.
Go ahead, Philip.
Well, so this is to me like a really good example of fear-mongering, because what they're doing, the reason why everybody's so damn confused is because they are saying everything.
Yeah.
They're literally saying like things that are contrary to each other. They're saying them. Yeah. And so when you have everybody out there saying everything all at once, and then like how can people that I don't have access to military cameras. That's not something I can get access to. They've got it. They know. And so that's why they're saying everything.
Yeah.
Because that way we know nothing.
Right. And so people can say Project Bluebeam. We can say all of these like specific deep state programs to put out these ideas of aliens and spacecraft. Just read the great book Mirage Men. There's even a movie made about it, of course. So this like purposely putting out these stories so that we'll be distracted and everyone's confused and everyone's talking in circles. Meanwhile, the plan is unfolding exactly as they want it to. What exactly is that plan? We don't know. But clearly this is part of their plan to do this, carry out this crazy disinformation campaign about it and get us all scared.
Yeah. Philip's right, though. It's like all these words like aliens, research, weather, shooting things like this we
NORAD,
can. I think, we can armpit fart all over this if you want to.
Okay. But Senator Kennedy came out also, and he had some words. It's amazing, though, at the end of what he said after this briefing, though, and he tells us all to lock our doors. Like, a lot of people are like, whoa, Senator, why are you telling us to be scared about this? Like, we should be concerned that what you went into this briefing, came out of this briefing, and you don't know anything more than when you went in. You're more confused now. Like, we're paying billions of dollars for these guys to explain things to you, and you left more confused than when you went in? And then you're telling us to lock our doors. Watch.
This has been going on for a long time. At least 2017. And last week we were told 2019. That's what I took away from it today.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Lock your doors tonight.
Thank you.
Lock your doors tonight.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, if it is aliens, they probably can get past a door lock.
Right. I'm sure they're not worried about a quick set door lock or whatever.
Yeah.
I just still maintain that, again, we're not talking about, we're continuing to talk about Nord Stream and making sure that it's top of mind for people. But the mainstream media is not. Everyone in that press room. Then you even had a reporter ask if President Biden was woke. That was literally one of the questions in the press room yesterday. Like, you're asking Corinne Jean-Pierre if President Biden is woke? How about...
What the hell does that even mean?
I don't know, but why don't you ask him about the Nord Stream pipeline? Let's drill deeper into that story. Like, can we talk about, all right, the secret Navy training grounds for where these divers were trained? Let's get into the story. Ask real questions of these people. You're in the press room. They call on you. Don't ask stupid questions. Ask real questions.
Now, during all this kerfluffle, China has specifically said that the United States does use these kind of spy balloons over our territory, to which John Kirby has responded, no, we don't. That's absolutely false. And in this exchange I'm about to show you with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, he says, one, we don't call them balloons, but then he goes on to call them balloons. He says backwards and forwards things. And then he's asked if we spy on China. He says, well, we don't do that with balloons. And he says, do we spy on China at all? And again, it's the nuttiest stinking thing. So see for yourself.
John, welcome back. Thanks for joining us this morning. Martha just said it could take a while to figure out where these three objects were from. What more do we know about them? What were they? Were they balloons? Were they from China?
Yeah. We're not describing them as balloons right now, George. We're calling them objects because that's the best description we have right now. What I can tell you is they were very much smaller than the Chinese spy balloon, in cases about the size of a car. They did not appear to have any maneuvering capability, so they didn't look like they were piloted or anything like that. And again, they fell down in some pretty remote locations in the Northwest and, of course, over Lake Michigan. So it could take us a while to actually reach the debris, let alone have a chance to collect it and analyze it.
Probably not from China?
We don't know, George. It could be from a nation state. They could be from commercial entities, research scientific institutions. We just don't know.
So what's going on right now? We had years and years where we did not detect, at least that's what spokespeople have said, we did not detect Chinese balloons flying into the United States airspace. Now we're catching all these objects and shooting them down. Is there more of a threat, or are we just detecting more? And if we're detecting more, why?
There's two things here. One, we have been studying the Chinese spy balloon program since we came into office. This is a program that they have been working on for several years. So they have ramped up their abilities. They have ramped up their deployment of these balloons over just recent years. So that is fairly soon. And then because of the spy balloon, we changed some of the radar parameters for our air defense capabilities, particularly over the northern part of our hemisphere. And it is possible that in part, because of tweaking the radar sensitivities, we are simply seeing more objects right now.
What more can you tell us about the parts of the payload of the Chinese spy balloon that have been recovered?
We had some good weather over the weekend, George. They were able to bring up some parts of the debris, some of the structure of the payload itself. Some of those include some of the electronics. I don't want to get into too much detail, but we are starting to get things up off the bottom of the ocean there, and try to get it analyzed by the FBI. Weather was not permitting yesterday. We'll see what it goes today. If the sea state will permit divers to get down there.
Yeah, are the Chinese going to have to shut down this spy balloon program now that we've discovered so much about their capability?
Just use the same diving team that you blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. See, that's a question George should have asked. Like, John Kirby, are you going to use the same special diving team that you guys used to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline? Why can't they ask these kinds of questions?
I know, so obvious.
Like, come on, that's a question I would ask. That was a layup. Because that would have been my passive-aggressive way of it. Like, I'm going to start hosting a show called Passive Aggressive with Clayton Morris, and I'll just invite on people from the White House. I'm on that show already. You're on that show now, but you're not a member of the White House, where I would say, Mr. President, when you guys blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, and I would start the question like that, and I would do it very passive aggressively. And I would keep circling back to that question.
I imagine you would have one episode and one guest, and after that one guest, no one would come on.
I would keep rotating through different guests. They're like, hey, do you want to go on that show? It's a new show called Passive Aggressive with Clayton Morris. Like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And then they never come back on again. No, I go through a whole Rolodex of people, and they wouldn't come back.
All right, we don't need to get back to that hot air.
No, we don't need to hear about Kirby.
But we learned more things from this, is that there are more countries now saying that they have more balloons. Now, Moldova and Romania both say they sent up military jets to shoot down balloon-like objects as well. And who helped them with that, do you think? According to the Daily Star, NATO. NATO, of course.
Of course. So Moldova and Romania are allies, NATO allies, and of course China and Russia are now threatening NATO allies. So we need NATO to respond. See how this is all.
And further, Japan just today all of a sudden said, actually, yeah, we remember some spy balloons in our area in recent years. They suddenly remember that too. The Japan, which is also Western aligned. So Western countries get balloons. It's like, like a clown, like you give these kids these balloons, and then Eastern countries get no balloons. They are perpetrators of balloons. That is the narrative thus far. We can shoot a lot of holes in it. This is literally like the whole narrative of the end of The Wizard of Oz, why she needs to click her heels 3 times, because you can't bring the balloon back down.
Right.
You know?
And it's also when Toto reveals that the emperor has no clothes, right? There's no actual...
That happens before that, but you're right, because the wizard was sort of a fraud, because it was a scam of... And actually, there are all kinds of parallels about was it the New Deal or the Great Depression? And Wizard of Oz, it's a parallel for American life and public relations as a distraction.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's propaganda.
Yeah.
You're literally watching it in action. I hope they will study what we're watching right now in college at some point. And like, this is perfect propaganda for them to be studying how this thing unfolds, this whole story, the stuff that they fed to us.
Yeah.
We can watch the dates. We can watch what they were saying on the record at the White House, at the Pentagon, and then see what unfolds over the next few days, guys. Like, I'm telling you, something big is coming. And you can see it in action from what these guys are doing to us right now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.